Hey there, Dr. Maggie here with Dr. Maggie Therapy, and I just wanted to talk today about the 6 topics that you must cover if you're going to do premarital therapy. If you're not doing this, then there is something really missing. And so we're going to go through those 6 topics today and kind of cover what's going to really be most helpful in making sure that your marriage is successful. But before I get into it, please hit like and subscribe, and leave any comments or questions down below as they come up, and I will try to get back to you and let you know what I think about that. So those 6 topics that you must honestly talk about, and they are, let's see, not in order of importance, because I can never name anything in order of importance, but they are things like sex, finances, children or parenting, relatives, chores, and religion. So those are the 6 things that we must really cover. So let's kind of get into some of that. People are often thinking that we're not supposed to talk about finances. We just know, we just do that. Who is going to make those decisions? And people say, well, we'll just make those decisions together. But I challenge you, do you really? Every time, do you pull out your wallet or your checkbook or your credit card? Do you ask the other person, is it okay if I spend this much money? Or this is my money and that's your money. How do we handle that? Are we going to have one pot and we're going to share it all together? What if one of you makes a lot of money and the other one doesn't make any money? What if one of you comes into the relationship with a lot of money and the other one comes into the relationship with a lot of debt? And now you're in this marriage and you never talked about finances. You got hoodwinked. You feel like you were tricked and that there's something wrong, and there becomes this resentment. So you've got to talk about finances. How is the money going to be spent? How are decisions about that money going to be made? Who is going to have the final say on the money? Those are huge issues. And I'm not going to tell you one way is right or wrong, but I will tell you, you must agree. Because if you don't agree on those decisions and how those decisions are made, then you're going to end up with a lot of anger and resentment. So you've got to talk about money. Another one is children. Now, if we are young and dumb and we don't have anything, of course, money is not the big issue, but you've got to decide, are you going to have children? How many children are you going to have? How will you parent those children? There are a lot of different ways of parenting, and I have my preferred way of parenting. I have the way that I taught when I was teaching and when I was in both lower and higher education. There are different things that are considered best practices, and so I have very, very fixed ideas about how parenting or what parenting should look like. But someone else may have very different ideas about how parenting should look. And if we are not in agreement, we are going to be fighting, and our children are going to split us apart if we indeed have decided to have children. Or let's say one says no children and the other says, oh, well, I've changed my mind, or I said I'd no children, but now I think I'd really like to have children. And now it's like, I'll just go ahead and quit taking my birth control. So, whoops, we have a baby. Those are not good ways to start a family. So you've got to make sure that you've talked about, do you have children? How many children you may have? How you're going to parent those children, not just when they're little, but even when they are adults. When do you kick them out of the house? How much money how are you going to support them? So raising your children. And then that brings in religion. All of this is tied together in a very real way. Let's say I'm a very religious person and I want to give money to the church. But you're not a religious person and you don't want to give money to the church. You're not a religious person and you don't want your children to go to church. But I'm a religious person and I want my children in church. Now we've got this really big issue. What if we're both religious people, but one of you have very different ideas on how to express your religious beliefs? Those need to be talked about. And if you cannot agree on those things, you might not be a good fit for marriage. These are topics that need to be discussed before you get married. Another one is relatives. How do we manage our relatives? If I have a big family and I want to spend every Sunday afternoon with my family, and you come from a small family and you would really rather spend your afternoon, your Sundays, just sitting at home watching TV or sitting on the bank somewhere fishing or some other kind of diversion, then we've got a problem. And maybe you don't like my relatives. My relatives are loud and brash, and your relatives are very quiet and introspective. I'm kind of drawing to mind the My Big Fat Greek Wedding story, where her family was really loud and brash and his family was quiet and introspective. And how do you manage that? Obviously, in that movie, and I believe it was based on a true story, in that situation, it was okay. It worked out because they understood the differences. But you can never fully understand those differences until you live them. And so what if you have relatives who don't like your spouse, your intended? What if your intended doesn't like your relatives? And now this brings me back into children again, because what if this is a second marriage? And you have children, one or both of you have children from a previous marriage or a previous relationship. I'm going to tell you right now, you better like those children, whether they're yours or not. Whether you like them or not, you better act like you like them for the rest of your life, because you never want those children to come between you and your relationship. Don't ever ask a parent to choose you over their children. That will not happen. I believe that in a marriage, the primary relationship is the marriage. But don't ask me to abandon my children because of you, because you don't like my children. And if that is a problem, please don't get married. Please find someone who loves your children. Find someone whose children you love, or at least can show love to. Okay? So that's, what do we cover? Finances, children, relatives, alcohol. A lot of times people want to talk, they have problems with substance abuse. And again, substance abuse can be a real problem. Let's say you like to party and I don't want to drink. And we don't, that might work fine as long as there isn't an alcohol abuse or dependence that's taking place. And this is the same with substance use. But when we have these differences, then people will often fight. This is one of the things that people fight about very often. And the reason I chose these 6 topics is that they are the topics that couples will most often fight about. Chores. Again, we go back to when you get married, you have this idea about how marriage is supposed to work. Who's going to do what? That if what chores, what is the division of labor in the home? Who's going to take off time from work to take care of the children? Who's going to clean the house or do the cooking? And who's going to do the yard work? One funny, not funny story that I heard once upon a time is the guy says, well, we just do our chores, I do the man chores and she does the woman chores. All right, tell me what those are. Well, the woman chores are all the inside work, all the housework, and the man chores are all the outside work, all the man chores, to take care of the yard and the car and all of that. And I said, well, that's great if that's an even distribution, but dude, you live in an apartment and you don't own a car. So there wasn't a very fair, equitable distribution of division of labor, the division of the chores. So those are things that you really need to talk about before you get involved in this and you get too far down the road. Otherwise, again, people are going to be really angry. And also, I think too, on how well those chores are done. You know, am I going to be a micromanager and come along behind you and say, you didn't fold those towels right, or you missed a spot, or I didn't like the way you dusted, or whatever it is. You have to be willing to be in agreement on some of those things, or at least be willing to accept the way the other person does them. And that is really important. And then another one that's really important, I think I've covered everyone except, drum roll folks, the big one, sex. Yeah, I said it. So couples will fight about sex a lot. And again, I'm going to tell you, I don't believe there is an appropriate amount of sex, or even an necessarily appropriate way to have sex with each other. And as long as it's legal, guys, as long as it's legal. But if there's a difference, a discrepancy in how you or how often you have sex, that's going to be a problem. So if you decide you get married and you never want to have sex, that's fine. As long as both of you are happy with that, that's okay. If you decide that both of you get married and both of you want to have sex and do it like rabbits, that's okay. As long as you are in agreement. And so that's something that really, really must be discussed. You need to be on the same page in terms of your sexual appetites and expression. Okay, I think that was all 6. We got finances, sex, children, chores, relatives, and alcohol. Oh, and I threw in religion. So that was actually 7, wasn't it? So I guess you got a bonus there. Make sure that you talk about those things, because if you want your marriage to succeed, you have to be on the same page. So one more thing I want to cover to get on the same page, and maybe I should do a separate video, but I'm going to go ahead and hit the high points of it. To get on the same page, I recommend that you do an age-old exercise, which is write your mission statement or state your goal. What is the purpose of your marriage? Why do you want to get married? What do you want to accomplish? And it could be something as simple as, we're getting married so that we can love, honor, and cherish each other for the rest of our days. Or it could be something like, we're getting married so that we can, spend our lives together, raising children and building a family and a future together and growing old together. Something like that. It could be something that simple, but you have a stated goal. That's what you're going to do. And I always ask people to do it in 25 words or less, because you want to be able to remember it and say it back really quickly. And then after your stated goal, you have the vision statements, or I've started calling it the action plan. What are you going to do to make that happen? What are you going to do to accomplish your mission or to realize your goal? Because a good goal, remember, is a SMART goal. So which is specific, measurable, achievable, reasonable, and timely. We've gone over that in another video. But you want to make sure that you have action statements. In our marriage, we show each other respect at all times. In our marriage, we are protective. In our marriage, we are supportive of each other at all times. So those are things that might be included. But it could also include, in our marriage, we have an equal distribution of chores. Or in our marriage, again, how you manage your finances, how you make those decisions. You list those things out. You put them on a sheet of paper with all of them listed, and then you read them back to each other every day. You make sure that that is what your goals really are. And one piece of advice here, real quickly. These must be things that you agree on 100%. You cannot say, well, I'll give you that if you give me this, because then you're not going to really be invested in it. You have to be on the same page. You have to really work through it. If you need a therapist or a mediator to help you do that, work through it, talk through it, honestly come to that agreement, because that will get you on the same page. And then you read it every day, every morning and every night, until you can memorize it. You know exactly what's on it, and you use it to keep yourself accountable. And that way you can have success in your marriage. Again, make sure that you do this before you say I do. Okay, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.